October 6, 2020, the requested project evaluation and review technique per CPM, critical path method, of the Task Force Taman Marawi projects were submitted to the Commission Secretariat, and copies of which were emailed to the honorable members of the committee. Moreover, on October 13, the Secretariat received a letter of support from the Marawi Sultanate League, signed by Chairperson Sultan Nasser T. Sampaco and its members. The group expressed their strong appeal for the confirmation of the ad interim appointment of Secretary Eduardo Drueco del Rosario as Secretary, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. The Task Force Taman Marawi accomplishment report as of October 1, 2020 was attached to the letter of support. That is all, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the members of this committee. Physically present is Senator Ping Lacson. I see virtually Senator Villar, Senator Riveros, Congressman, of course, the Majority Leader, Congressman Almario, Congressman Chipeco, Congressman Alvarez, Congressman Advincula, Congressman Pancho, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Appointments, Congressman Zamora, Congresswoman Didi Cagas. I see virtually present Congressman Adarao, and who else? There are other members of the committee. Senator Marcos is virtually present, she just logged in. And probably the others would be following suit. Some of the senators are probably still trying to catch up some with their sleeping time due to the late budgetary deliberations just this morning. So, may I know from everybody, there are still some additional questions that will be propounded, or other concerns that will be propounded for our appointee here. To be recognized, please just raise your right hand or address the chair. Thank you. Are there additional questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lacson?
Yes, I would just like to ask the appointee if resettlement of those affected by typhoons is included in the mandate of the agency.
Appointee, you can answer the query.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the mandate of the agency is to assist victims of calamities. If there is a need for actual displacement and resettlement to safe areas, then we will assist the...
Mr. Chairman, my question is very simple. Is resettlement of those affected by the typhoons included in your mandate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So, after the successive typhoons, yung Pinta, Rolly, Ulysses, what are your action plans?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the action plan of the department is to make an assessment.
And you have an action plan for each of the calamity, right?
Yes, Mr.
Okay. So, what is your action plan on Quinta?
Basically, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, our first step in undertaking a resettlement is to directly coordinate with the LGUs concerned and pinpoint the exact locations where the affected households or families will be resettled. From that point onward, we will have to validate the safety to hazards of the chosen sites, and if found to be safe as compared to their previous ones, then we'll start with the funding requirements and submission to the Office of the President for the funding, Your Honors.
And this would involve hazard mapping, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Have you made your coordination with DOST and DNR in this regard?
Mr.
Isa
Chairman,
muna. Okay. Unahin natin yung pinakamalakas, yung latest, Ulysses. Meron na kayong coordination with DNR and DOST para doon sa hazard map?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the hazard map is now easily accessible based on the Hunter apps exposed by DOST, and we can easily determine if the chosen site is safe or not, Your Honors.
Okay. And there are categories here, not just safe. Meron tinatawag na safe, unsafe, and controlled. So have you identified which are the safe, unsafe, and controlled areas
Yes.
for process of resettlement?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is classified as highly susceptible, moderate, or less susceptible, Your Honors.
And you have identified these areas.
Yes, Your Honors.
So ano yung next action taken?
The number of legitimate beneficiaries and submission of the funding requirements, Mr. Chairman.
Of course, you cannot do this without the PDNA, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you already have a copy of the PDNA?
The PDNA is will be conducted by the Office of Civil Defense. And
Yeah, I know
is
that. But
ongoing.
do you already have a copy of the PDNA, say, for Rolly? Muna.
We don't have any PDNA yet, Mr.
How
Chairman.
can you craft a rehabilitation and reconstruction plan kung wala kayong PDNA? You cannot start.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, based on the initial report submitted by the LGUs, we can start with that initial figure, but we have to validate and confirm so that we can fine-tune the recommendation, Your Honors.
Yeah, but those are very preliminary, yung submission ng LGUs. In fact, all the post-disaster needs assessment should be finalized by the OCD, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And how far have they gone if you are monitoring? Because this is also your concern, being the, sabihin natin, resettlement of SAR for purposes of the typhoon victims.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, at the moment, per our latest coordination last Monday with the Office of Civil Defense, the NDRRMC is now focused on early intervention activities. That's providing relief assistance to victims of calamities. And they are now organizing for the deployment of the different agencies. It is multi-sectoral for deployment in calamity-stricken areas, Mr. Chairman.
Have you already met with this, with the heads or at least representatives of these agencies?
I have talked directly to the administrator of the Office of Civil Defense, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, and I have given instructions to my regional directors to participate in the PDNA that will be conducted and spearheaded by the Office of Civil Defense, Your Honors.
Do you already have an inventory of areas which are considered danger zones, saka yung no-build zones? Those
Mr.
areas affected.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, as I have said earlier, we have the existing other applications and we can readily find out if the sites are highly susceptible or not, and the proposed sites that will be given later by the LGUs will be safe for resettlement projects.
So with or without typhoon, you already have this in your files
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
nationwide.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So kung merong typhoons, alam nyo na kagad kung saan i-resettle.
We can say that the residential areas, based on the CAUP of the LGUs, we can have an idea. But for the availability of the exact site must be chosen and offered by the LGU for the construction of the settlement. Your
Ano ba
Honor.
yung standard ng, say, wind resistance ng structure that you are supposed to build, especially in hazard or hazardous areas as far as typhoon?
The standard, Mr. Chairman, is 250 kilometers per hour, and for earthquake, it's 7.2, Your Honor.
7.2, but in the danger zones, in yung typhoon prone areas or earthquake prone areas, I mean, yung nasa belt, malapit sa belt.
Yes, sir.
Shouldn't it be 9, intensity 9? 7.9 seems to be a little low, di ba? Kasi especially yung sa fault, malapit sa fault,
if it's very close to the earthquake route, let's say a kilometer or less, in as much as possible, we would recommend construction in that site. But if ever,
Yeah, but there are already structures, and you cannot drive them out. They're already there. So what do you plan to do?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, I think that fleeting is the best mitigating measure, Your Honors.
So as we speak, coordinations are being made with those agencies.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Lacson. We recognize the virtual presence of Senator Bongo. With apologies, I want to recognize Congressman Ramirez Sato and Congresswoman Ramirez Sato and Ben Noel. Are there other questions from the body addressed to the nominee? The Vice Chair, Congressman Ronnie Zamora is recognized. Yes, sir, you can proceed and unmute. We cannot hear you. Yes, we have you now.
Mr. Chairman, can I just address directly the nominee by asking him a number of questions, basically about first.
Please proceed, Your Honor.
Yes. Can I just ask him about his stint as chairman of the Bangon Marawi Task Force?
Please proceed, Your Honor. And nominee, you can address directly the queries coming from the Vice Chair of the Commission on Appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, I was designated by the President.
Yes, there are no questions yet. You wait for the question.
Yes. Are you still chairman of this task force, Bangon Marawi?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
The reason why I ask is there is supposed to be a Marawi fund composed of the amounts contributed by various countries. Is there still a Marawi fund? Mr. Nominee.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, actually there are pledges from the different countries. And this fund is given to the Department of Finance and lodged in the National Treasury, Your Honors.
Let me give you, just to remind you and to remind everybody, what the promises were. Australia, $1 billion. United States, $785 million. The United Nations, $3 billion US. Japan, $600 million US. Thailand, $50 million US. The European Union, $1.5 billion. Did we ever get these amounts, Mr. Nominee?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the protocol is goes this way. Let's say the United States pledged to provide support in the amount of $700+ million. It's not being given to the national government, but instead it is channeled to the USA, who has NGOs who will undertake the intervention. It will not pass through the national treasury anymore, but being undertaken directly by the countries concerned. The same goes with Australia. With the exception of Japan, Japan is channeling its assistance to the national government, but it will pinpoint in coordination with the national government what projects will be undertaken. And that's what happened with regards to the Japanese support. All others are being undertaken directly by them and not channeled or given to the national treasury, Your Honors.
So the European Union, which promised $1.5 billion US dollars. We never got any PL money out of that.
I have to check you on that, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Mr. Chairman, with the permission of the Vice Chairman, I would just like to interject and pursue that point.
Please proceed, Senator Lacson.
What kind of intervention does your agency have in this regard when there are pledges and actual donations coming from not necessarily governments, because there are NGOs in other countries that would extend help to the typhoon victims? Anong klaseng intervention? Zero? Your agency? Because sabi mo, diretso na sa NGOs,
Yes,
local
sir.
NGOs. So, anong intervention ang pwede niyong gawin in that regard? Bahala na sila mag-usap, wala na tayong pakialam.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, actually the NGOs will coordinate on the ground with the LGUs concerned and the task force and inform us of the projects that they have. And they will tell us as to where the projects will be undertaken. And most of these projects are basically on capacity building activities, especially the Australian support. They link with their civil society organizations, NGOs, and conduct capacity building activities on their own, Your Honors.
Hindi ba baliktad? Dapat kayo yung nagbibigay ng guidelines? Anyway, I would not belabor the point anymore. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. Let me just pursue this point. We are not talking small amounts, Mr. Chairman. We are talking of more than 7 billion US dollars. That's about 350 billion pesos. I'd like to know really what happened to that money, whether that money in fact arrived to us in the form of projects or other interventions by NGOs and so on, whether any money was received in a special fund administered by the Department of Finance. Can we have an idea of what happened to basically 7 billion US dollars, 350 billion pesos?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, in as far as projects undertaken directly by our development partners, they are the ones undertaking the projects on their own. So far, what we have received came from the Asian Development Bank, China, and the government of Japan for a total of 7.7 billion pesos only, Your Honors.
Can you repeat that with the indulgence of Congressman Zamora? Can you repeat that? It's not dollars, pesos, 7 billion pesos.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, it's 10.7 billion pesos only coming from the Asian Development Bank, China, and the government of Japan.
And with the permission of Congressman Zamora, and the bulk of that would be dedicated to capacity building. So you will have foreign donors coming in, but a greater portion will be allocated for capacity building of the NGOs that they pinpoint. Is that my correct impression?
Basically, they have this amount will be used for them for their admin requirements. They purchase vehicles, hire consultants and people on the ground, and the excess will be used for their projects in any calamities triggered areas, Your Honors.
Thank you. Congressman Zamora, you can.
Yes, so that doesn't really contribute too much to the amelioration of the problems of people stricken on the ground. Am I not correct?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, actually, they also provide relief assistance. They give relief goods for the people directly affected. And they tap NGOs and civil society organizations to undertake this. And of course, they coordinate, let's say if it's relief assistance, they coordinate with the DSWD. If it's
For instance, Mr. Nominee, here is the problem. did they come up with anything that helped your particular department solve these issues? For instance, Australia, did they give you any kind of shelter assistance so that you could put up in Marawi, 10,000 units for those who were bombed out during the insurgency? Is there anything like that? Did any one of these countries help out in the housing problems that are very large in Marawi even now?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, most of the interventions are non-infra projects, with the exception of the Japanese government, who provided and funded 1,500 permanent shelter in Marawi City, Your Honors.
All of the rest provided nothing of the sort.
It's non-infra, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
So of the $7 billion that we were made to believe we would be getting, we got them basically in terms of what? Canned goods, rice, all kind of intervention, but that lasts only for a few weeks. In the end, it is something like the Japanese, who should be emulated. At least they're going to leave you with 1,500 houses. But the others are not going to be able to do that. That is correct, is it not?
That is right, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, but they follow their own protocol and they follow their own priorities, which we do not like to intervene. We appreciate the government of Japan for talking to us if what we need, and they will be funding. So we have identified the housing projects for shelter, and that's the one they funded, Your Honors. Most countries, they will just announce that they are pledging or giving support in this amount. But with regards to the project implementation, they go directly on the grounds, and mostly, as I have said earlier, it's for early intervention activities, Your Honors.
I have a few other questions, but never mind about Marawi. I mean, you are still the task force head, are you not, Mr. Secretary?
Beg your pardon, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
still the chairman or the administrator of the task force on Bangon Marawi, are you not?
I am still the chairman of Task Force Bangon Marawi, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Well, perhaps maybe you should write a note to all of these so-called all of these donors, and remind them that they have not really contributed what they promised. Basically you're talking of what, 1/50th of the amount that they promised that you actually received. And that's not even you for housing, except for the Japanese. You're not really getting anything that remains on the ground. That's my point, Mr. Chairman.
It is noted, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Can I just ask, Mr. Chairman, about this this complaint that we read? This is from the Inquirer, rebuilding Marawi and the resistance and the resilience of terrorists. It talks about Task Force Bangon Marawi selling of metal-based debris, scrap iron, from the now flattened, most affected area of Ground Zero. They are claiming that Task Force Marawi said that the revenue from the sale of debris would be put up in a trust fund for the homeowners in the most affected areas. Are you familiar with this, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
So what happened? You sold the scrap metal?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, actually it's not the Task Force Pamang Marawi who sold the scrap. It's the local government unit who conducted the auction as to the who will be the chosen buyer of the scrap. They conducted a series of publications. In their publication, it was offered at 10 pesos per kilo, but there was no bidder. On the second publication, they placed it at 8 pesos. Again, there was no bidder. And on the third, there was a bidder who offered 8. So when there was a bidder that offered 8 pesos per scrap, other bidders followed suit, and they got a 10 peso per kilo, and that's the winning bidder who got the contract of buying the scrap.
So what are we talking about, Mr. Secretary?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
How much are we talking about, the amount of the contract?
Actually, it depends on the number of kilos that will be sold, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors. And I'm not certain, but I think more than 50 million pesos is now presently in the coffers of the local government unit as a trust fund. And there was a committee created by the local government to oversee the utilization of this amount. And I can say that everything was undertaken above board, and it was conducted properly by the local government unit, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Yes, but the money should not remain with the local government unit. That's correct, right? It should be distributed to the homeowners whose buildings were flattened.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the concept applied by the LGU is once the selling of this scrap is completed, the committee will now consult the IDPs, the barangay captains, on how best they can utilize the amount raised by selling this scrap, Your Honors. I do not know at the moment if the selling and buying of scrap was completed already, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, but once completed, the intention of the local government unit is to, for the committee, to have consultation with the IDPs and the barangay officials, Your Honors.
Well, that's not a satisfactory answer, but never mind, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure there are others that will be asking questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Congressman Zamora. Are there other questions coming from our colleagues? I'd like to recognize the physical presence of Congressman Ferrer, the chair of the Committee on National Defense. So we now have an all-committee panel here, physically present right now. Are there other questions coming? I see the hand of Congressman Bernoel. Congressman Bernoel, you're recognized.
Mabuhay aga, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Mr. Secretary, nag-usap na po tayo. I know you have so much on your plate right now, but you have Rolly of Ulysses, but para lang po masarado na po natin yung Yolanda na 7 years ago pa. To get it out of the way na po, and to get it out of my head. Ito pong dati, may report po kasi na there are over 20,000 deaths no Yolanda. And in some articles, kayo po magsabi sa akin kung totoo, hindi, no? You reportedly asked the NRD na i-understate yung death. 20,000 yun, sigurado ako, kasi nandun ako nakita ko along the road yung mga patay. You wanted, I don't know kung sino po ang nagbigay ng instructions, na yung debt limited to 6,000. Kaya po siya narilipe. Gusto ko lang po malaman, totoo po ba o hindi?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, I can say and say it straight to anyone's eyes, there was no instruction to downgrade the number of debts. If I remember right, it's about 7,500, and this is based on the validation on the ground by the LGUs from the barangay to the municipality, submitted to the province and to the region. And that's the one that we will have a tally, final tally of the number of missing and the death. It's accurate in as far as we are concerned. There was no instruction to downgrade the number of casualties because when I was interviewed during my stint as Executive Director of NDR-RMC, I said I am ready to resign if this can be proven because there was no instruction to that effect, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Ay, nagkausap na po tayo, okay na po tayo. You are also with me in addressing yung mga natira sa Yolanda. But in that regard, I will totally disagree po with you. You said 6,900, now you say 7. But taga doon po ako, it's definitely not less than 10,000. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Congressman Noel. I'd also like to share a one-liner. I was the one modestly aside to build the first mass grave near that bus station in Tacloban City, downtown. Alam siguro to ni General Rosario. Are there other questions from our colleagues? Hearing none, Majority Leader, what's the pleasure of the esteemed gentleman from Zamboanga, Davao?
Baka iba yung kilala sa Zamboanga, etc.
Congressman De Rosario, you're recognized. Mario, I'm sorry. Medyo puyat na po ako, Your Honors. Wala pa akong tulog.
Mukha ka eh. Ang pwede ka sa flight mo.
May we have that remarks deleted from the records. That was a joke coming from the good majority leader trying to enliven this hearing. Senator Grace Po is likewise recognized. She's virtually present. Majority Leader.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think any member of the committee has registered his intent to ask a question. And we have heard Secretary De Rosario respond to all the questions upon him. I therefore move to terminate the hearing on the ad interim appointment of Mr. Eduardo Dueco Del Rosario as Secretary, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, and that the body will proceed into an executive session, Mr. Chairman.
Any objections? Before that, I recognize the virtual presence likewise of our good Minority Leader, Senator Trilon. Any objections? Is there a second to move into an executive session as moved by the Majority Leader? Seconded by Congressman Ferrer. No objections. The same is hereby approved. So we will be having an executive session and
Mr. Chairman.